Welcome, everyone, to a very special podcast episode tonight. I am Aggelos, founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network, and I am joined by the one, the only, Steven Sharif, creative director over at Intrepid Studios and makers of, well, hopefully, the MMO that brings back greatness to our genre, Ashes of Creation.
Hopefully.
Hey, I got a preface. It. I got a lot of faith in this, okay? A lot of faith. Okay. Yeah. Hello, chat room. Thank you so much for showing up tonight. We've got a fun show for you. Make sure you stick around after this interview because we are going to go ahead and jump right into our normal MMORPG news and discussion, where we're going to go Talking Dead style, and we'll probably reanalyze everything that you've said, Steven, just so you know.
Oh, that sounds fun. Why am I not on that? I should be on that too. No, I'm just kidding.
Guess what? You can be. We're just going to pull you right on in. So let's go ahead and just jump right into these questions that we prepared for you. We've broken them down into several different sections. We're going to talk a few things about nodes, classes, progression, some crafting questions, and then a few little miscellaneous stuff that we're thrown in. And if we have time, Steven was nice enough to say, hey, we can actually ask some questions from chat. We'll see how we go. So first off, congratulations on hitting Kickstarter in like 12 hours, was it?
Hey, thank you. It was 11 hours and 7 minutes with 22 seconds to be exact.
Were you sitting there with like a stopwatch just going?
Oh, yeah. I was just like clicking, refresh. No.
That is odd. That's like one of the fastest ones I think I've ever seen happen.
You know, I think we had a discussion today with an interviewer from PC Gamer, and he said we were the fastest funded MMORPG Kickstarter over 500K. So it is pretty exciting. And
we're getting close to reaching our first stretch goal as well as first backer goal that you've set. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But before we did that, you guys released a big video on Metropolis, like a few weeks, a week or two before your actual Kickstarter. And one of the questions that a lot of people had was, and how do I want to say it? Like, you mentioned that these things can be destroyed, but the effort needs to be equal to the amount of effort to build up one of these metropolises.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. We don't want the mechanic that allows for meaningful conflict to catalyze change in the world to be something that's lightly undertaken. If you're going to institute change for a system that involves as much as the node system involves, then you're going to have to commit as much resources as it took to create that node. And what this means is you're going to see, I mean, if you're talking about the Metropolis stage, you're going to see a battle on the server that's representative of potentially months worth of work. Mm-hmm. And, it's going to be something that is epic. It's server defining. And that's something that we wanted players to have the opportunity to do. What rises can fall, but it can also successfully defend itself, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, everything that players do, they will be contributing to their home node instance, or not instance, but their home node, where they're planning their routes, everything they're doing. But this could take, like you said, weeks or even months of effort. So
absolutely.
And I know a lot of the finer details will probably be hammered out via alpha, beta, as they always are. But with the broad scope of things, like, how are you seeing the state, like the siege mechanics taking place? Like, are people going to need to quest in order to earn experience for their siege, or do you know any of that yet, or gather materials?
I mean, there's so let me preface everything obviously we say is this is pre-alpha discussion, obviously, and the reason for alphas and betas is to test these systems, these mechanics. So everything I'm going to tell you is subject to that condition. But currently the way that it is working is as you are a citizen of a node and you're developing that city and advancing the mechanics of that city, there are certain buildings that are available, certain quest lines that are available. There are systems in place to allow you to dedicate resources, time, commitment, questing. Guilds have a role to play. Individual players have a role to play in preparing for certain events. And one of those events, as you said, is a potential siege against another node. So there's a lot of different systems that build into that culmination of a fight against another node's citizens. So yes, short answer is there's a lot of systems in place that players will go through who are participating and preparing for that siege.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I know it's something that kind of, I don't want to say bothers me, but when I see some of these more PvP-oriented players coming in going, this game is going to be, like I'm going to remember this from Dark Age of Camelot or...
No, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, those things flip hands every minute.
Right.
This is going to
Absolutely.
take forever.
No. This is something... So the concept of PvP in our game falls under a pillar that I refer to as meaningful conflict. Mm-hmm. And something loses meaning if it is so whimsical. If you're capable of changing, a server with the flick of a wrist, then that's something that's not meaningful to people. That's just something that's overly repetitive. It's going to be redundant and just not hold any actual impact on people in this game. I wanted this type of system to reflect a lot of hard work. So it needs to be a payoff mechanic. It needs to be a time sink reward, delayed satisfaction, because in my opinion that couples well with our philosophy of risk versus reward. You're risking that time, you're risking that development, and without that risk, the reward is just not that sweet.
Absolutely. I can tell you, if I can lose a keep or a castle or a town in a day, like I wake up and it's gone, I'm not going to want to actually invest in this kind of thing.
Right, absolutely. So just to explain a little bit further on this mechanic, different stages of nodes have different declaration periods. Mm-hmm. So when an individual will complete the necessary prerequisites towards initiating that declaration, they'll lay the declaration. A period of time will exist between that declaration and the actual siege, and that period of time is dependent on the advancement of the node. If you are at a stage 3 village node, that time period may be 1 or 2 days. You'll have a 1 or 2 day notification, a server-wide notification that a siege has been initiated against this node. The citizens have time to prep, they have time to call for allies, they have time to allocate node funds towards enhancing the defenses of that node and prepare for this assault. If it's a metropolis, that time period may be a week before the siege actually takes place. So you have this type of how do I describe it? It's just anticipation. If you are either an attacker or a citizen, and I want people to feel that type of anticipation. And it's going to be that week period of time. Now, when the siege is complete, if the defenders were successful, there will be a cooldown period between when a siege can be initiated again, and that cooldown period will likely equal around 10 times the declaration time. Mm-hmm. So a metropolis level node is really only going to be able to experience one siege per, 8 weeks? No, less than 8 weeks. A little less than 8 weeks.
Very nice. You mentioned that city leadership would have control over taxes in a node's zone of influence, or ZOI. That they can use to advance the cities. Now, here's something that I was really curious when I first heard this. Do you guys envision any kind of controls in place that would prevent?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No. It's not like it's not like you're an elected official and you can just embezzle from the council. Like I'm taking all this money and leaving. No. So mechanics are in place for nodes to excise taxes on freeholds, on services within the node, and even to collect taxes from services and freeholds that exist within subnodes that are under the region. Like if you have a metropolis, that metropolis within its ZOI is going to have villages and towns and potentially cities, and they're going to have taxes as well, and it's going to flow to the government of the metropolis, and so on down the down the stage tree. But these taxes get held in a node fund, in a city fund, that can only then be allocated to certain mechanics within the city. For example, if you want to dedicate defense spending, you can allocate those funds towards guards, towards barracks, towards city walls and defenses. If you want to if you want to build up your marketplace and increase the funding towards the stock options of the city, or trade routes that need to be developed between other nodes, that you as a city official who've been elected, you have domain over those allocations. You actually cannot take the funds for yourself.
Excellent. Yeah, that's what I was kind of worried about. As I heard it, I'm like, is this just going into one giant bank that at the end of my term, I'm like, well, I'm getting elected out of here, so I'm just going to grab everything and run.
That would be, you got to have a little more faith in us from a design aspect.
I definitely.
I know that the industry has led you to believe otherwise, but again, I am not an industry background. I'm a gamer, so I have the same thought you would have, and I've made sure to account for that.
Good. See, you were already prepared for that, like right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Because as a gamer, 100%. I jumped there, and you're like, nope, I would have thought that. As you mentioned before, these nodes, being a massive undertaking, will take portions of entire server community doing activities in a certain node's zone of influence to build it up. Can you tell us a little bit more about, what kind of day-to-day content within a node will players have access to help the node's overall effort? Like what types of things?
Aggelos, you cut out there a little bit. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Sure. I'm curious about the day-to-day activities that players are going to be able to do within a certain node in order to grow. Like you said, you mentioned stuff like for various quests, you had task and narrative quests and stuff like that. But, like the average player coming out and doing his work in a day, like what things can we do?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, this is a MMORPG, obviously, and there's a lot of things that go into an MMORPG. There's character advancement, there's community advancement, there's tasks, there's events, there's narrative play, and as nodes advance, I'm sorry, hold on, give me 1 second. It's a little bit loud in the background.
Sure.
Sorry, my team was getting a little loud.
Hey,
so anyways.
They're working on the game. It's all good.
I know. They are working on the game. But anyways, there are these, anything you can think of in regards to adventuring and class development there. There's a religious class you can advance. There's an artisan class that you can advance. There's resources that you need to be able to collect. There's freeholds and housing that you need to be able to develop. There's processing plants for industry. There's trade between nodes. There's monsters to kill. There's storylines to explore. There's narratives that relate to you and the overarching world. There's dungeons and raids. There's a whole bunch of stuff that falls into what makes an MMORPG great, that is going to be in this world.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yes, and some people are pointing out, since they wanted to see it, my cat. She shows up in every single podcast I do.
Oh, I can't see.
You'll have to watch the video afterwards. Every podcast, she just insists on being here. So we actually have another question here about different types of nodes, but I'm actually going to ask the same question from chat because it fits in here. This is from DYGZ. Question was, or not that one just yet. Dante9109 ask about, is there a chance for an island node? And with that, the question was, will these nodes be themed around zones, races, people that show up, or will players have a choice either via vote or a GUI system to determine the aesthetic of their city or the types of quest tasks that they can do in such a city?
That's a good question. So first part of that, will there be nodes on islands? Well, there are islands that exist in the game, and nodes cover the entirety of the map. So it is fully possible for a node to appear on an island, given that there is enough activity there from the player base to warrant that node development. In regards to the flavor flavor of the architecture in a node. The way the node system works is if you're a character who's collecting experience, you have markers that denote your race. And when you give experience to the node by just doing your normal activities, that experience is tagged with your racial marker. And when the node develops, it will represent in its architecture what the predominant racial marker was in contribution to its development. So to answer your question in short, yes, nodes will reflect the predominant race in its development.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, scrolling back up, I had a bunch of questions. The chat room is just jumping today. There's so much hype for this. Now, how will the type of node be determined? You mentioned there's scientific, military, divine, economic. Will these be predetermined by the node, or will they be determined later as the node progresses based on the players and what they're deciding to do?
So as it stands now, types are predetermined based on certain location factors. As I said, nodes exist all throughout the world, and the location of said node will determine its type. But this type will be noticeable. It will be what's the word? It will be seen at the first stage of development. When the first stage, when a node propagates real-time assets in the world, is basically these NPCs, these merchants that come into an area, and they offer services and or of stores or whatever the deal may be. You will see the flavor of the node from those merchants. So if it's a military node, you'll see military people. If it's an economic node, you'll see merchants. If it's a scientific one, you'll see scholars. And if it's a divine one, you'll see priests and clerics. So players will have a very firm understanding of which node is which type in order to know how they want to progress.
Excellent. That's a good one. I'll get to that in a second, Atropos. So Atropos, also from Tamriel Foundry, had a question about API later. We'll add that to the end. We can. All right. Moving on here. Talking about classes at this point from what we had predetermined. For people in chat room, I see we're getting tons of questions. I'm trying to write them in as we get them, but hold your questions till as we get closer towards the end. That way we can ask them if we have time. I have a couple of them written in, but we're getting tons of them because a lot of people are excited. Classes, earlier you mentioned there are 8 starting classes: Tank, Fighter, Summoner, Rogue, Ranger, Mage, Cleric, and Bard, with the ability to subclass and swap and be able to swap the subclass. At least that's what you were thinking originally. Do you know if there's going to be a way to switch the main class, kind of akin to like Final Fantasy 11 or 14 with their job system, or is that character locked in for its lifetime?
I don't have an answer for that one yet. That's still a discussion that we are looking into. So I know that there's going to be versatility on the player's end for changing the subclasses. I don't know if that's going to be a function available for the primary class. It's very likely that it will through potentially some kind of quest system that allows you to basically subclass your primary class and get a different subclass on the main character. So yeah, we'll see.
Excellent. Yeah, I was just curious about that one. So now when you're adding a subclass, and this is something that kind of goes into a little bit more of combat mechanics, you're saying it's
when
not
you're adding a secondary class? A secondary class.
Yeah, secondary class, subclass, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
For instance, I'm going to be, like you said, a fighter who has a charge ability, a mage, and now becomes like maybe a teleport.
Yeah.
Now, you're saying you're not going to add any new skills, but instead you're going to augment the current class skills.
Correct one, yeah.
It's been noted, like in various places, such as community Discord, as well as some of the forums and stuff, about people saying, well, what about going the same class for both main and sub?
Yep.
Is that a possible? And what kind of benefit would you
Absolutely.
actually see by going like mage, for instance?
So when you choose your secondary class, the same as your primary, you're basically doubling down on your role. You're doubling down on what your archetype represents. So you're going to experience augments that will enhance a primary skill's purpose, so to speak, and it really just lets you specialize in your build. The flavor that a second, now you got me saying subclass, that a secondary class offers is to customize your primary class's archetype in a way you want it to perform. And if you're going with the same archetype class for your secondary class, then you're just, as I said, doubling down on your role.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Because I'm sitting there going, I wonder what these benefits would actually do. Now, have you guys thought about, in mechanic wise, how these things are going to function? Like, are different classes going to have a different feel and play style? Like, are they going to be aimed more towards a very specific niche role? Like, such as a rogue, you bring a rogue along to pick traps. They do maybe some CC related stuff. Like, are you looking at it in that classes are going to be more specific in their roles, and then you can augment?
I think we are.
Okay.
I think we are doing that. I think that it may not be as niche as you said, but there will be a degree of focus within a certain role, and your customization of the character and choice and skills and augments will play within that degree. But yes, I think that's a good description of how our classes will play in that role of different archetypes.
Okay. Being more of a not tab target, but we'll say a hybrid system between tab and action. You're not a full action, which thank goodness for that.
Right.
They become, sorry for anyone who likes full action, but those, I tend to find them to be very boring, because when you can just spam action stuff, a lot of the challenge comes out of a lot of the fighting, especially PVE content, because it's just a spam slam your face against your keyboard and hope you hit the right buttons. But can you tell us a little bit about how classes will function differently, such as like tab target working well for a mage and maybe melee, but how is this hybrid system going to work between melee and range classes?
So our hybrid system uses elements of tab targeting and of positioning and movement. It also includes some keystroke time frames, as well as dodge and move mechanics. It kind of is a culmination of all of those things into one. It's kind of difficult to explain without actually you playing it, but it is.
I accept your offer.
Hey, I think you have an alpha game.
I do.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting.
I know, but I wanted to reach the appropriate blend between skill-oriented combat, as well as a functionality of targeting abilities, certain abilities, and using strategy. So I mean, there's two forms of combat. There's skill and strategy. And sometimes when you're too heavily on the action side of a targeting, action targeting, you lose the strategy aspect of it. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. So I think it's a very comfortable blend as a hybrid system between action oriented and positioning and strategic choices. Yeah, it's difficult to explain in words. I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying, and actually, I'm going to try to pronounce his name. Shaz Ashnir in chat made pretty much my next question exactly. Being a hybrid system with hitboxes, how are these going to work? Are dodges more of like a cooldown thing? Will it be kind of like an invincibility frame? Like when you hit dodge, there might be a character animation dodge, but you're just invincible, similar to like how Guild Wars 2 does it?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. My lead designer, who is an expert in our blueprints, would have a good answer for that. I know that I know that our dodge and movement mechanics are going to include templated skills in positioning, and if you're not under that template as it progresses, then you're not going to be hit. And dodge will allow your character to move from that template, obviously. So it's kind of like I don't know. I would have to have Jeffrey explain a little bit more detail on that.
Understand. I didn't want to like sidestripe you with some of these.
No,
but,
it's okay.
We got a lot of questions. It's like when you said hybrid, a lot of people are like, "What does this mean?" And it looks like chat's pretty happy with a lot of these. So that's really cool. So we're gonna go ahead and move on from this part. We're gonna move on to progression, character progression.
Cool.
We know the game uses a standard leveling system, and I say standard, but you get it. 1 to 50, whatever. But what other kind of character progression will there be? Like, Do skills receive experience? Do they level up as well? Are there plans for a sort of alternate advancement in the future, or some sort of horizontal progression once you actually hit?
There is. Yeah, so I mean, our game kind of breaks down from a progression standpoint into your adventuring class, your artisan class, and then there are different components in regards to what religion you focus on, how your race advances, what your guild may progress as, what you may have individual achievements as a solo player for your storyline and narrative, and all of those can offer different augment abilities, and they're not all vertical. Some of them are horizontal, and there are racial structures in place. There's a hierarchy in the church. There's a lot of different options that allow you to augment that primary archetype you've chosen with augment abilities that reflect different progression types, not just your secondary class, but what religion you're using, or just a lot of different customization.
Excellent. I'm really excited because a lot of chat's just loving these questions right now. I'm just so excited that people actually are enjoying some of these.
I know.
It's
I'm going to
awesome.
get off this, and my team's going to come and hit me with a club. Now I'm just like, you're giving away all the information in one podcast. It's like, hey.
Well, as I said before, when my bill comes in for the Kickstarter, we can do our next podcast. We'll both have black and blue eyes or something.
There we go. Yeah.
All right. So PvP progression. I'm trying to keep these quick because we got to move on. For the PvP focused player, what kind of PvP progression is there going to be? Will there be ranks to advance through for more the more you PvP are engaged in, or is there more of a karma based system where your karmic standing is affected by PvP actions, similar to like how Ultima Online did it? Example being blue versus red players.
No, I think that that PvP. I mean, obviously, there's a whole bunch of different types of PvP in the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different systems that relate to PvP, whether it be the castle sieges, the node sieges, the caravans, the guild wars. These battlegrounds. Excuse me. Hold on one second.
Yep.
These battlegrounds that exist in the world. There's also our arena systems and rankings and ladders that are associated with our arena system. And as players progress in the arena system specifically, they're going to accumulate a sort of legacy. These legacy points that relate to how you can progress with different in-game PvP items that might be accessible, with PvP related potions and advancements, and just kind of stuff that relates to more the arena system, and that might expand outside into some of those battleground stuff as well. We'll see.
Nice. PvE progression for the PvE. What types of PvE progression will be available to players? Like dungeons and raids. Has a group limit been set or established?
I mean, we're thinking that the group limit's going to be 8 to reflect the 8 archetypes. We're thinking that the raid side's going to be around 40. Obviously, none of this stuff is set in stone. Yeah. The PVE content, we're looking at dungeons that are either soloable, or even can dungeons that are applicable to obviously the group, dungeons that might be raid dungeons, epic bosses. I mean, for me, in order for, I think there's a yin and yang in MMORPGs between PvP and PvE, and if one is stronger than the other, then the game suffers. So a lot of people think, oh, this is a very PvP centric game. Well, they couldn't be further from the truth. Our PvE is really going to be the bread and butter of what makes that PvP meaningful. So we're going to build the heck out of these raids and these dungeons that are going to be applicable. And I mean, it's just going to be so much content there that's available. Content also that's chosen by the players, and how they develop the world.
Excellent. Couple questions from chat that kind of directly relate to this, and I'm going to try to pronounce these names. If anyone's watched any show I've ever done, name pronunciation is probably the worst thing I'm at, so please don't be offended. Abdiman, sorry, can you ask if there's going to be PvP gear or PvE gear? I think you mentioned it before that it's pretty much just
There's only going to be one, just gear.
Excellent.
Gear is epic just in and of itself. It will not be epic PvP or PvE gear. It's just going to be, what gear you have.
Perfect. Love it. I think this is Leuie. Sorry, I can't pronounce it. Can you ask about the purpose of pets and looting? Do they pick things up for you, or will they be self-looting? Since we did have something along the lines like we're getting close to the cute kittens and puppy pet.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
For backers.
I love those. Yeah. Oh, so the question is, are there going to be pets that pick up stuff?
Yeah.
We were talking about that actually a couple months ago about having pets that pick things up. I mean, picking stuff up can be a bit monotonous, and obviously that's a functionality that a lot of players like, and it's something we're considering.
Right. Excellent. All right, I'll ask that one later. So now we were mentioning about open world stuff as well. Because like in one of your first Node videos, which I loved, by the way, I love the art style. You said about the epic dragon coming out, which would probably be a world boss at that point, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
How do you guys plan? And this is the eternal MMO question, right? The Zerg mentality that open world bosses tend to have, that people just rush in, they can negate pretty much all mechanics. Do you have something for that?
No. Yeah. No. I don't like that. That's. I mean, those raids should involve very specific mechanics that are problem-solving mechanics for raids to overcome. I mean, that's half the fun is a challenge, not from a challenge that you can just zerg and complete, because that's not a challenge. That's just getting the people together. This raids should have specific mechanics that players will have to learn and test in order to complete. So yeah, I wouldn't say that that's a worry of mine at all, that content can just be zerged down.
Thank goodness. Because I know that was, a little self-story here, but, Guild Wars 2 had this whole thing, and they actually got better near the end, so don't give that. But at first, they're like, we're going to have these big epic world bosses, and they were very big and pretty, but when you got down to it, if you had enough players, you didn't even really have to pay attention.
Right.
Later on, they adjusted and did some things that actually made it a little bit more difficult. I wouldn't say super hard, so I was kind of hoping that was something you guys had in mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent. Final question here for progression. What are the main sources of experience for players as they level? Like, are we looking quest? Is it grinding, more dungeon? Like, obviously, during Alpha Beta, you guys will probably be looking at the numbers and going, dungeons give too much experience. We got to cut that back. But will there also be a type of group aspect that actually encourage you to play with other players? This is an MMO after all.
Right, I think so. I think community being such a central point, we want to incentivize players to group. I think that the game is being built, for that group perspective, while at the same time keeping in mind solo players. But I think the short answer to that would be tentatively yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. I mean, hey, there's got to be something. You're still early development, so a lot of this stuff, this is about as pre-alpha as you can get, ladies and gentlemen. The game looks gorgeous already, but anyone who knows anything about development, these things take time, and as you're going through iterations of things, you may have a plan for something, but when you get there going, this doesn't quite work. We gotta shake this up a little bit.
100%.
Crafting. I love crafting, all right? You guys mentioned that top quality gear will be able to be crafted and dropped from PvE bosses. How do you intend to structure the gear economy so that both remain relevant, that one doesn't take over from the other?
Well, I think that our gear is a blend between boss gear and crafting gear. I think that the mechanic we're moving towards with the artisan class and crafting is that you can deconstruct this boss gear and potentially craft it as a master crafter. Obviously, there's a give and take there between using what you've achieved to gather an ability to produce more of those things. But I think there needs to be a comfortable blend between what you can achieve as a server with these epic bosses, and then also rewarding people who master their crafting class with the ability to produce, top tier gear.
Will this crafting class, that you mentioned, is this actually separate from your main class? Like you can pick it up in conjunction with, or is this something that you dedicate to?
No, this is something this is something separate from your adventuring class. This is your artisan class falls into 3 categories. You can progress in the artisan class as a gatherer, You can progress as a processor, or you can progress as a crafter, an item creator. And the comfortable aspect between those three kind of resembles that of a Trinity class system, but for crafters. There's an interdependency between the roles of a gatherer, a processor, and an item creator that creates reliance on all three categories of the artisan class.
Okay, so you're essentially, like you said, you're picking one of these three things for your crafting, and that's what you focus on. A couple questions. Kung Fu Massa, I love that name. To add on to the crafting question, will player to player trading be available to help different artisan classes? So if you're an artisan but you're not a gatherer, you're going to need to get it from somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, player trading exists 100%. I mean, the economy is dependent on, what Jonathan can do over in Region 1, and how Steven in Region 2 can benefit from Jonathan's time.
Excellent. You actually asked. I love that you mentioned that because you actually asked one of my questions about gathering. But a few other questions that were asked. Meatfimus, or Meepimus. Sorry. Will resource gathering be a manual aspect, like players actually hitting a resource node, or will it be some kind of automated generation?
That's a very good question. So right now we have discussion about harvesters, and if you're a citizen of a node that has a ZOI, and in that ZOI is some vein of mithril or vein of iron, or a forest or whatever, if you own a freehold, you have the ability to place down a harvester for those things, and that will give you a return over time for resources, potentially until that vein is depleted. And there will be limited spots, and veins pop up around the region that are kind of randomly. And then also it's a manual thing as well. If you come across something that's either a one-time harvest and it's not that kind of vein situation, you can harvest it manually. You'll be able to go to the vein yourself and harvest it manually as well. But we wanted to add bonuses to the gathering class that reflect your citizenship of an area as well.
Right. Will crafters be able to take like boss drops, example being Epic Dragon Fang, our Holy Sandal, whatever, I don't know, and use it to either craft or augment current gear to make it more powerful? So, like, will this be a task only available from player crafters and not NPCs, like, if it's possible?
So, I'm sorry, repeat that one question one more time. I just had something pop up on my phone. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's all good.
Question one more time.
More or less, epic crafting material drops from a boss. And the player who gets it will say he's not a crafter. Can he take that to a crafter and say, can you please augment my gear?
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. I think that there's going to be functionality for that.
Right. And we mentioned about, like you said, the trinity of crafting. Will we got the artisan, we got the processor, and we got the gatherer. Will there be specializations for these three? Like, I am the best swordsmith, I am the best at mining, or I'm the best lumberjack, stuff like that. Like, can you specialize?
There sort of is, yes. There are professions that lie within each path, and you can dedicate, further double down on your focus by by progressing some of those professions.
Okay. And finally, when you have that epic piece of crafted gear or drop gear, MMO Goat in chat asks, will armor and weapons be unbound or bound or both?
We're leaning heavily towards a very unbound system in the game.
Will gear degrade and break?
Yes, gear can degrade and break, and not the kind of meaningless degradation that you've seen in other MMORPGs. If we're going to have a system that includes includes primarily unbound gear, then you have to have some sort of sync to counterbalance the creation aspect of items. So we're going to see gear degradation and potentially even breakage that then would require a portion of the materials and a crafter capable of crafting that item in order to repair it.
I feel like you need a golf clap right now because it's fantastic news. A lot of things that make economies so stale in modern MMOs is that bane of the bound items that never break.
Absolutely.
What's the point? Like, the inflation gets nuts. Like, I have an epic piece of gear that never breaks. I'm never going to need anything else. Why would I buy that drop that you just got when this epic sword's better and will be with me forever?
That's so true. I mean, like I said, I came into to make Ashes of Creation because I, as a gamer, was just getting fed up with certain mechanics that were becoming so prevalent in the genre that I love. Whether it be that pay-to-win cash grab or these bound items that make an economy worthless in such a great game. It's like, why? I just kept playing games, and every night I would think to myself, why are these developers doing this? Why is this designer doing this? Like, do these people even know? I would get so heated.
Absolutely.
that it kind of just drove me to say, whatever, I'm going to do it myself.
No one else can do it right. I'm done. That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
And I know obviously there are people that enjoy different things. I'm aware of that. We're not aiming to be a game that's going to make everyone happy. That you can't do that. If you set out to do that, no matter what, you're going to fail. What we're doing is, we're taking specific examples and seeing who does this resonate with in the MMORPG community. And it's been very apparent that these past couple days, this resonates with a lot of people.
Oh, there we go. Absolutely it does. I mean, if you're looking at chat room right now, they're just going nuts. Like, they're so excited. It's fantastic. So that's going to end our crafting side. We got a few miscellaneous questions, and then if we still have a little bit of time, we'll open up to more directed. And I've got a couple questions out of chat. Chat room, you guys have been fantastic. I know you guys have been asking tons of questions. I've been trying to grab the ones that are relevant to the line of questioning, and then we'll get into more freestyle. Last little bit of questions from us, and then we'll go from there. This was coming from a role player perspective. So what kind of extensive lore, emotes, world building will there be? What kind of role player support or even thought was put into the production of Ashes of Creation?
So before I even, got a team to help build this project, lore was in my mind. Like, what happened to this world? Where did its people go, and what brought them back? And obviously for me, story is very important to immersion. And I've been very careful not to reveal too much about the lore and the story, and I know that people are just hungry for it. I understand that because I myself love lore and story. But I feel like sometimes if you reveal that aspect of a game, it's like watching a trailer for a movie that just tells you the whole movie up front and says, here's the end of the movie, don't bother watching us. Like, I want players to experience this storyline, this lore, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on the setting as time develops. But just to be clear, this Ashes of Creation game is more than just an MMORPG. It will become a franchise that expands beyond the game, and its story will translate into many different iterations, I believe, over the coming time.
There we go. Excellent. It's funny you say it because I think one of the very first questions I think I even asked you was, what kind of lore is there? I think that was one of the first things I even threw at you. So, like, our first interaction was, where's the lore, man? And I do understand what you mean. One of my favorite aspects of some games, like particularly Elder Scrolls series, was the lore that you tried to find out, but they never told you the answers to, such as like the Dwemer disappearance. You never really knew, but every game you're just like, I gotta find out more. I'm glad they never told me because that was just something that kept
It's a
me
great
going.
hook.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's a great hook.
All right, so given that there's a karma system in the game we talked about, if you're attacking a non-combatant player that's not in a PvP area, you're going to be a baddie. So like very red player, blue player, Ultima Online. Now, with that being said, with karma, is this going to extend into like maybe some form of stealing system, aka like Elder Scrolls Online for PvE, or more like PvP side in Ultima Online where you could possibly steal resources that a person's carrying, or maybe a looted item that's not bound to them that's in their bag or something?
Well, are you talking about if you were to kill a player, or are you talking about just like I can walk up next to you and take something?
Let's go with the latter part first, but I'm curious about the killing someone too.
Okay, so the latter part, no, there is not a theft mechanic for you to walk up to a player that's alive and steal something. That's not in the game.
Okay.
The first part of it is, our flagging mechanic revolves around basically, death penalties in general. Like what type of death penalties occur in the game. And while you cannot de-level from dying, you can accrue negative experience. And this experience debt reflects certain penalties that you'll experience from a combat effectiveness, both in PvE and in PvP, stat degradation, lowered health and mana, less proficiency in gear equipment, and being able to do things. The more you accrue, the more difficult it will be to perform, which is why through death you need to recover that negative experience, and you can do that by continuing to adventure or to do quests, to do practically what you're going to do in the game, but if you die as a non-combatant, you're going to experience a normal death penalty. If you die as a combatant, a person who's involved in PvP, you will experience You'll experience less death penalties. If you die as a corrupted player, a person who has murdered a non-combatant, someone that was not participating in PvP with you, then you're going to experience 3 or 4 times the death penalties. And we want to obviously give players the opportunity to exercise some agency in the open world, but at the same time there has to be a risk versus reward. And if you're going to go around murdering someone, you're going to become completely ineffective over time if you just continue to do it. Furthermore, if you are a corrupt player and you are you're killing other players, people who want to track you down that have that bounty hunter status, which is going to be a toggleable skill that will have a cooldown associated with it, so you just can't go back and forth to try to find them, and you're not susceptible to attacks from them. They can go out there and they can track down these murderers and they can kill them. And in addition to the death penalty, if you're corrupt, you will have the ability to drop your gear, your actual gear, if you're corrupt. So there's again a risk versus reward. We want to deter people from making the game a gank box. It's not going to be a gank box, not going to be a murder box. Just from the stringent deterrence of our corruption system and flagging system, I know it won't be. I played similar games that had similar flagging systems, and it wasn't that gank box. But at the same time, we incentivize players to have that meaningful conflict. We're unabashed about that aspect.
Absolutely. All right, so we're nearing the end of our questions here, so I'm going to be asking a few that were from chat. But last one that I have is, you mentioned that in the past that you're not doing the multi-guilding option, which, thank goodness, I hate that. It takes away from the community aspect when you're like, I can be a part of just a million guilds,
Right.
You join a guild because it has one thing, but do you interact with the members? Nah, you don't care. You're only there for whatever reason. You're not building a community. So I'm glad you decided to go with that route. But with that being said, how are you going to do guilds? Are they going to be tied to a character? Or are they going to be tied to account? So if I join the Dungeon Crawler Network Guild that will be in the game, am I tied to that on all my characters, or just the character?
No. Just on your character you joined with. Yeah. So if you have alts on your account, those alts could join another guild. I mean, you got to remember, if you're having an open world non-faction based game, intrigue, espionage is a very important role, intelligence gathering, and that's an aspect that maybe us who are part of guilds don't really enjoy, but it is a legitimate aspect of the game. And people who create alt characters, they could join inconspicuously an enemy guild or something and gather intelligence. I wouldn't restrict ever your guild association with your account. Your guild association is for your character. You are playing that character. That character is its own person, and can do, is a part of a guild.
Absolutely. So. With that being said, this is from chat, JD4WD. Man, these names. Will there be guild wars? There
are.
Wage
Absolutely.
War?
Yes, you can wage war, and those guild wars aren't going to be 30 minutes or an hour. They'll be as long as well, they won't be as long. I don't know exactly the length. It may take days to complete the guild war, so to speak. But there will be mechanics for surrendering and winning and that kind of stuff.
Sniffle Booty in chat. Sniffle Booty. Can you go into depths on guilds, guild halls, anything to pretty much do with guilds?
So myself, I've run a large guild for 14 years, and I wanted to make sure that the aspect of guild play in Ashes of Creation is very in-depth. And that includes leveling guilds and skills associated with the guild and achievements that guilds can have, guild halls and their functionality, castle systems. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things you can do as a guild. Not to say that as a player who doesn't want to be a part of a guild can't have a lot of things to do as well. It's just going to be specifically in regards to guilds. Yes, there is a great depth of functionality there.
All right, excellent. Cash shop related. It was mentioned that cash shop cosmetics would be recolors of existing items you can earn in game. Is this true? Is that something that's going to happen? Will there be a balance between what is in the cash shop versus what is in game? Because obviously some of these more modern games, all cosmetics. Every cosmetic was cash shop.
No, I don't like that. So obviously there are cosmetics that will be achievable in the game, and they will be on par with cosmetics that are achievable through the cash shop. We're going a very hard no pay to win stance on the game, and that means that our cash shop is going to reflect cosmetic items. Will we just gut the cosmetics in the game so that we can incentivize and monetize the cosmetics in the cash shop? No, that's a version of cash grab that we don't want to do. I mean, that's what I'm against. So obviously, there's going to be a great degree of customization and cosmetics that are going to be available in the game, and then there's going to be some unique ones that are also available in the cash shop, and those cash shop ones might be limited time. They might be holiday specific. They might be that kind of thing. Not to say that there's not that availability in the game though.
Gotcha. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop taking questions at this point because I got about 8 more to go and we're running short on time, and I want to be respectful of Steven and his time. He's been amazing and taking so much of these questions and answers. So I have about 8 more questions I got from chat. Are you still good with that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
Right. I got some of the big ones. Sorry, everyone. It's just, I don't want to hold you. I could hold you here all night, and I'm sure these people would love it.
I could speak all night.
Yeah, we got tons of stuff, but I got to be respectful of that. And of course, we have our dungeon crawls where we're gonna pretty much analyze everything you said in detail. This is from Prophet WTF. He asked very early on, even before the show started, actually, so I wanted to make sure I got this in. How many characters will a person be able to have on an account and per server? I think World of Warcraft, for one, allowed you to have 10 on a server and 50 across your account.
That's a great question. I don't really know the answer to that right now. I will tell you it's not going to be an obscene small amount. There will be a comfortable level of character slots available to us, to players, because we are a subscription model game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's see here. Nivhawk in chat, he asked whether or not we could ask about castles, since there's quite a few people, and I did see this a lot. People were asking about why would a guild want to compete for these castles that are available?
So castles exert control to a degree over the economies of nodes under its influence. There are, as it stands now, 5 castles in the game, and those castles have a domain that they control to a degree. Owning a castle, the guild may be able to allocate some of those taxes for increased defense spending in nodes, separate of the nodes taxation policies and coffers. They may activate certain events and abilities that can progress citizens of certain nodes. They may unlock certain types of buildings. They may, castles have dedicated nodes around the castle that exist outside of the node system that's buildable to a certain stage by the guild that owns the castle and the guilds that are in an alliance with that castle. There's a lot of different mechanics that relate to our castle system.
Excellent. DYGZ in chat asks, what is going to happen to siegers if they back out of a commitment without actually attacking?
Well, then they would lose all of the time and effort that they spent in attacking. I guess, so I don't know if that's in reference to castles or in reference to nodes. But if it's in reference to nodes, I remember fielding a question a while ago about, what's to stop the node from initiating their own siege so that they can go on the cooldown timer? Well, I mean, first of all, if you're spending that amount of effort and time to initiate a siege, it becomes an open siege for anyone who's not a citizen or a registered ally or defender for the node. So you would be doing the work of the attacker just to give them an open door and say, come on in and try your best. It's such a degree of effort involved with sieging either castles or nodes that I don't see that being an issue.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Grisham Tordath in chat asks, with the weight system, if you have to store your in-game money in a bank or at a particular node, will you lose the node will you lose the money if you will lose the node if the node is destroyed? Will you lose the money if with like regional everything?
So weight doesn't relate to currency. I will say that to begin with. Weight relates to
It sounds like you need a refreshing Red Bull.
I know, right? I'm so sorry.
They do not fund our show
all day. Weight will relate to materials, relate to goods, gatherables, items, that kind of thing. They're not going to relate to currency.
Okay, excellent. Shivant in chat, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Ceivent. I've heard that Discord is going to be integrated with Ashes of Creation. Will you have a sort of proximity chat voice, or will you have a sort of proximity voice chat, or is it just going to go through Discord?
That's a great question, and it's one of my very early systems that I wanted to make sure was included in Ashes of Creation, and that's going to be a voice over IP that relates to the party system and the raid system, as well as integrated into the guild system as well. If we're working with Discord to achieve that, I think it's achievable, and the codecs I think will be good that you'll be able to hear well. I know some other games have tried it in the past, and the functionality and technology wasn't quite there yet, but I think we have achieved that in the industry now, and that Ashes of Creation is going to do it very well. And obviously, there's going to be functionality for you to mute people if you don't want to hear them talk, or you not to participate in that. And there'll be abilities in raids for commanders to appoint talkers and stuff like that. I want to have a good functionality in the UI for players to really capitalize on these systems.
Excellent. My buddy Atropos Nix over there, awesome guy it is. He's a very talented add-on creator. He was doing a lot of that for ESO. He had a question: does Intrepid have any initial thoughts about supporting APIs to support community-developed web tools or even in-game UI enhancements?
I think on the web tools question, the answer to that is tentatively yes. In regards to the in-game systems, I don't have an answer for that at this time.
Okay, excellent. But if you do, he's fantastic. I gotta shout him out because he did one of my favorite add-ons for ESO, and he was fantastic at that. So gotta shout him out with that. Finally, Telcar Gaming asked, and he did this long before. So again, we want to talk about the Kickstarter. You've been doing fantastic with this Kickstarter. I mean, I just looked at we're like 250 new backers away from the small cute small pet reward, and very close to the group mounts. Do you have any details about some of the larger pledge packages, like what some of the large ones have? And
do I have details on the pledge packages? Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought you were talking about the stretch goals.
No, like pledge packages. And,
what do you want to know? What questions do you have?
Well, I guess more specifically for some of the higher ones. I mean, specifically probably one I threw myself into. Phoenix Initiative being something, as well as monthly Q&As you guys have been doing. Is that opening to anyone who supports at those levels?
Right.
And can we talk about it?
Yes, 100%. So the monthly Q&As, what level is that at again? I can't recall.
It's the Royal line.
Royal Line, got it. Okay, so the monthly Q&A is really going to be an interaction between those pledgers, being able to actively get their topics discussed and interact with us as the devs as a part of that monthly Q&A. The Phoenix Initiative is a very, very unique system that's going to involve certain convenience, not pay to win at all in any way, shape, or form, but certain convenience aspects and elite status in the game that you'll be able to access an instance at the city hall of any node and be with other Phoenix Initiative people in just like a private area that's going to include some pretty cool like cosmetic access, like specific cosmetic trees that you could achieve potentially as being a part of that Phoenix Initiative based on your advancement in the game and what type of resources you can come across. But they'll have, and that will always get updated and stuff. It's a pretty cool, I think, system that makes your player kind of stand out.
Right. And finally, I guess here's one, name reservation. These are always a big thing. How is that going to be handled? Is it going to be handled like from like the top tier people get their first pick and it goes down, or is it just like a free for all for whoever put it in first? Like, because that's
a good question. I think it's going to go from the top down. I think different pledge packages above the name reservation are going to have first dibs and cascade down all the way to the entry for a name reservation.
Do podcasters who talk to creative directors get their name saved?
I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. No, you gotta get in line with the rest of the backers.
All right. Well, thank goodness I know where I'm at least. All right. Excellent. Well, Steven, thank you so much for this amazing interview. I know chat has been going nuts with the answers you've been providing. It's fantastic. I'm honored and thrilled to at least have this opportunity to talk to you as well as support this project, because I can tell you what, being the MMO lover that I am, these past few years have been very depressing. Looking for that MMO home, looking for a place that I can go. I don't need to look for other games. I got my last one. This is it.
Yes, that's absolutely. I feel you on that.
And honestly, with what you're creating, like I said, as long if you're keeping up with your promises, don't ever go free to play or anything like that. You got
absolutely.
Me. That's something I love.
Looks like you're going to be with us for a long time then.
Fantastic. I already told your community manager to be prepared for me to bug her constantly. So
okay, good.
She's prepared and ready to go. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who watched this this podcast now. It's going to be available both on our RSS feeds, YouTube, and all those fun places as well, so you can watch it again. Steven, fantastic work. Congrats on the Kickstarter.
Thank you.
Hopefully
appreciate
we keep going. And
thank you very much.
If anyone is interested, our normal MMORPG podcast, The Dungeon Crawlers, is going to be taking place right after this show. We'll take a few minutes so I can set up everything, and we'll come right back live, and we're going to talk about everything we learned in detail, as well as a bunch of other little fun stuff. So stick by for the discussion if that's something you like. Thank you, Steven. Good luck.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.